Welcome to Beyond 90 Minutes. The wind howls through an empty city ground, carrying the echoes of a season that promised everything and delivered chaos. Floodlights hum against the Nottingham night, painting long shadows over the pitch. Somewhere deep inside the stadium, a chair still spins in an office that hours ago held its final conversation. A headline flashes: Nottingham Forest sack Nuno Espírito Santo. The statement calls it mutual consent. But the fans know better. So do the players. And so, it seems, does Nuno himself. But what really happened here? Was this just football's cruel rhythm? Results, pressure, and the inevitable firing line? Or something darker? A struggle not of goals and tactics, but of power, pride, and control. Because in modern football, failure rarely starts on the pitch. It begins in boardrooms, in text messages, in decisions disguised as alignment. Power doesn't roar, it whispers. And in Nottingham, those whispers grew into something loud enough to tear a club apart. To understand why Nuno Espírito Santo fell, we have to go back to the day hope returned to Forest, and the seeds of conflict were already being sown. December 2023. Nottingham Forest are in freefall. Steve Cooper, the hero who brought them back to the Premier League, has been dismissed. The club's identity feels fractured. Too many signings, too little stability. Then, out of nowhere, Nuno Espírito Santo returns to English football. A man of presence, calm, stoic, the beard, the glare, the quiet charisma. Fans remember Wolves under him. Organized, fearless, almost poetic in transition play. For a fan base desperate for calm after chaos, it feels like the perfect fit. Nuno's first days are pure theater. Camera flashes at the training ground. His first team talk, clipped, philosophical, almost spiritual. He tells his players, "We must be united in everything. Discipline first, success follows." And at first, it works. Clean sheets return. The defense tightens. He steadies the ship with the same precision that once made Wolves one of the league's most difficult sides to break down. For a while, Nottingham breathes again. Fans sing his name. Pundits talk of the return of Nuno's order. But within weeks, the cracks that had been plastered over start to show again. Transfers are debated in boardrooms far above his office. Agents whisper about upcoming deals Nuno hasn't even been told about. And somewhere between the joy of the fans and the optimism of the headlines, the same old problem begins to return. Who exactly runs Nottingham Forest? The calm, it turns out, is only the surface of a deepening storm. Every club has an invisible hand. At Forest, it's Evangelos Marinakis, billionaire, owner, and captain of every ship he touches. A man whose ambition for the club is unquestioned, but whose methods are unique. Those who've worked under him call him present. Every decision flows upward. Every issue lands on his desk. And for managers, that presence can feel less like support and more like surveillance. Nuno, a man forged by independence, feels the pressure immediately. He's used to leading, to commanding loyalty. But in Nottingham, he finds a hierarchy already layered with influence. Ross Wilson, the sporting director, tries to balance the scales, part mediator, part messenger. Behind him, advisors, analysts, and agents with direct lines to the owner. Soon, small frustrations turn into patterns. Transfers he doesn't approve arrive anyway. Training ground schedules are questioned by people who don't attend training. Emails from the board begin to include suggestions on tactics and player usage. To most clubs, this is normal, collaboration. To Nuno, it's intrusion. And in his silence, resentment starts to build. Staff members recall that by February, he barely spoke in internal meetings. He'd listen, one source later said, but you could tell he'd already stopped believing. The board sees stubbornness, Nuno sees interference, and between those two interpretations lies the real story of Nottingham Forest's undoing. Because once trust breaks at the top, it always trickles down to the dressing room below. If the boardroom is tense, the training pitch becomes its mirror. Nuno's sessions are famously intense: positional work, repetition, precision. The kind that turns good players into machines, but only if they buy in. At first they do. Players admire his attention to detail, his calm confidence. But by spring, the atmosphere shifts. Whispers spread. Too rigid, too robotic, too cold. Senior players begin to tire of constant drills and little explanation. A midfielder reportedly jokes, "We're rehearsing a play, not playing football." Another tells a journalist anonymously, he doesn't trust us to think. By late autumn, the squad is divided. Half loyal to Nuno, professionals who believe discipline is the only path to survival. Half quietly hoping for change, feeling the spark of Steve Cooper's emotional style still missing. In training, mistakes now feel heavier. When Nuno raises an eyebrow, the room goes silent. Assistants look nervous before offering feedback, and Ross Wilson starts receiving messages directly from players about morale. To the outside world, Forest look like a side trying to gel, but inside the air is brittle, as if everyone knows the season isn't just about results anymore. It's about survival in a political ecosystem where loyalty has an expiration date. And while journalists continue to write about formations and injuries, the real fight is already well underway. Behind the scenes. A quiet civil war fought in whispers, not shouts. Summer 2024. Transfer season, the point where most managers strengthen their squads. For Nuno, it becomes a battle for his authority. He gives the board a list of targets. An experienced center back, a creative midfielder, a pacey winger to fit his system. The board counters with something different. Younger profiles, better resale value, commercial upside. Meetings turn tense. Nuno insists that stability matters more than marketing. He reminds them, "We are building a team, not a portfolio." But the faces across the table are already fixed. Within days, names appear in the press. Players his staff never discussed. Rumors swirl that Marinakis himself has called agents, finalizing deals before Nuno even sees a contract. Then come the whispers about starting lineups. Certain players encouraged to start, to maintain their value on the market. Whether true or not, perception becomes poison. In press conferences, Nuno's composure starts to crack. Asked about transfers, he smiles politely. "We work together." But his eyes tell a different story. Weary, frustrated, and already halfway out the door. Behind closed doors, the rift with Ross Wilson deepens. One source describes a meeting where Nuno leaves mid-sentence, muttering, "This is not football anymore." By autumn, even assistant coaches admit they're waiting for the inevitable. The club that once begged for order now collapses under its own bureaucracy. And in the background, the whispers become plans. Replacement lists drawn up. Conversations held. All it would take was one bad night, one result too far, to trigger the coup everyone expects. November 23, 2024. Amex Stadium. Brighton versus Nottingham Forest. A freezing wind off the sea. Nuno stands in his coat, motionless, Expression unreadable. Forest look lifeless. Passes miss by inches. Players glance at each other instead of fighting for the ball. The cameras zoom in on Nuno, his jaw tight, his hands clasped. He looks less like a coach and more like a man watching something slip away. By full time, it's Brighton 3, Forest 0. The scoreline feels heavier than numbers. It feels like confirmation. Hours later, Marinakis and Wilson meet privately. By the 26th, the replacement shortlist is finalized. On the 29th, it's done. Insiders claim Nuno already knew. Staff whispers. Player silence. The signals were everywhere. When the call finally comes, he doesn't argue. He listens. He thanks them for the opportunity. Then he quietly clears his desk and walks out of the city ground for the last time. No statement, no bitterness, just silence. The club's press release calls it mutual consent, but behind the scenes, people call it what it was: an execution done politely. As one staff member later put it, he didn't lose his job that night. He'd been losing it for months. And in that silence, Nottingham Forest moved on, as if nothing happened. The PR machine roars to life within hours. A thank you post on social media. The phrase "fresh direction" repeated like gospel. But those who were there say the mood at the training ground was strange. Not relief, not anger, just exhaustion. Players message privately, "You didn't deserve that." Some delete the texts before hitting send. Others leak to journalists about tension and fear. In the boardroom, they call for a communication review. But everyone knows it means one thing: tightening control again. Forest becomes a club where no one wants to speak too loudly, because you never know who's listening. Nuno disappears completely. No interviews, no statements, just a single quote from his agent. He wishes the club success. And with that, he vanishes from English football. Rumors surface of NDAs, of compensation agreements tied to silence. And though no one confirms it, his absence says enough. In a sport obsessed with narratives, Nuno's ending is almost poetic. A man who built teams on unity, undone by division. Football loves to talk about evolution, data, directors, structure. But behind every layer of progress lies a question nobody wants to answer. When everyone has a say, who's really responsible when it all collapses? Managers today are hired for their ideas and fired for sticking to them. Clubs crave vision, but punish individuality. Owners demand obedience wrapped as alignment. And every season another name joins the list of managers who fought the system and lost. Nuno Espírito Santo's story isn't just about Nottingham Forest. It's about football's shifting balance of power, a warning of what happens when control becomes obsession. Because, in the end, results didn't bury him. Politics did. So maybe the real question isn't whether Nuno failed, but whether anyone could have survived in his place. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Was Nuno doomed from the start, or did he challenge a machine that was always going to win? If you love stories that show the game behind the game, subscribe, because next time we're lifting the curtain on another story where the truth isn't on the scoreboard.